Yo, what's up, chefs? Hope you're having a good time in the dungeons today, or at least later in the day once all the patching is completed. Just going to be making a quick video going over the early access Hotfix 45 patch notes and giving my initial thoughts and impressions on them, so let's hop into it. For the changes, we're starting off with just a couple bug fixes or quality of life fixes. We've got fixed an issue where players could not loot after defeating the Ghost King. Obviously, this is something that needed to be changed ASAP. I wasn't aware of it because I don't play trios, but if this was the case, then this is definitely something they needed to fix pronto. Next, we've got fixed an issue where the high roller warlords rewards were not appropriate. Not sure if they're implying the rewards were less than optimal or too optimal. If anybody knows, you could drop that in the comments. Let me know. I'd appreciate it. But sounds like in general, they're just making a quick adjustment to the rewards. So that's fair. And then next up, we've got a couple of changes, which, unfortunate for us Warlock players. We've got Warlock's Dark Reflection attribute bonus ratio changed from 100% to 50%. We've got Warlock's Blow of Corruption attribute bonus ratio changed from 100% to 50%. We've got Explosive Bottle damage changed from 3 to 1 and no longer scales. For the first two changes, my initial thoughts are quite a bit of confusion. For anybody who's been playing the game recently, particularly in solos, at least from my perspective, I can't really begin to imagine what prompted them to make these changes prior to changing other things. I mean, such as Robust, Anti-Magic, Iron Will, Slayer, Savage Roar, Rage. The list literally goes on and on for things that I could envision being changed prior to this. But as you've probably seen from the title of the video, multiclassing is getting removed. So the only thing I can kind of think of here is that they're just making these changes in preparation for multiclassing going away, and that these aren't really intended for the current state of the game. But, I mean, if that was the case, why not just wait a week to implement these changes? And I'm not really sure, so that's my initial thoughts on this. I mean, it just doesn't really seem very reasonable to make these changes without changing other things. But like I said, maybe they're just doing this in preparation for multiclassing getting removed. As for the explosive bottle change, they brought the nerf bat out on this one, to be honest. I'm aware of the fact that in really, really high echelon of games where, people were min-maxing to the max and they're bringing in like 12 explosive bottles, it could definitely be an issue. But outside of that, I mean, particularly when it comes to Warlocks, Wizards, Clerics, the ones that were actually benefiting from the scaling of the explosive bottles, it's just a really big nerf, and I can't really imagine anybody's going to be using them anymore. I mean, with a tick damage of 1, and I'm not positive on the tick rate, but I assume it's like a quarter of a second or half a second. I mean, you're going to throw one and somebody's going to run through it and they're going to take like 5 damage. So I can't really imagine they're going to be very useful at this point, but we'll just have to see. I could be wrong on that. Like I said, we'll just have to see. The area accessible by double jumping in the ice cavern has been limited. I can only imagine this is just a good change overall. I'm sure everybody that was playing Ruins probably unfortunately remembers walking into the middle room of the Ruins map and there being like 2 to 6 rogues sitting at the top just looking down on you. If you ever took a fight in that middle room, you were almost guaranteed to get third-partied by a duo of rogues or a quad stack of rogues that had teamed up at some point in the lobby. So I think this is good. I don't really think there should be too many areas of the map that are accessible by one class with one perk that no other class has access to, but, that's just me. Next, we've got the High Roller name tag appears again, which I don't play much duos and trios. Play a little bit of duos, but basically no trios. But from what I've gathered, I think this is probably a good thing. I believe most people, in most people's eyes, the fights in High Roller Trios games were already really chaotic. And with the name tags being gone, I think they were probably a bit too chaotic for most people's liking. So I think most people are going to be pretty happy about the name tags coming back. Next, we've got a pretty big change, which is map rotation is back for all party types. I've yet to get in the game and see exactly what this means. I was also not playing during the previous implementation of map rotation. I took a break. I was playing prior to that, and then I've come back during the most recent wipe. So I never got to test it out previously, but I've seen both sides of this. I see people in general chat every day talking about how they want map rotation to come back, particularly when it comes to questing. As a solo player, there's going to be quests where you have to go to crypts, and I know a lot of solo players were not happy about having to put together a group of 3 and or just not putting together a group of 3, but then having to go solo queue crypts and do their quests. On the flip side of that, though, I've seen a lot of people have very negative opinions of map rotation. They say it splits the game up too much. You've got trios groups that aren't willing to queue goblin caves, so they'll just wait for the map rotation to go back to crypts. And some people have had some very strong opinions about it, to say the least. Todd Father, as an example, in some of his videos, he's, from my recollection, he said it was basically killing the game. So this is something I'll have to test on my own and kind of see how I feel about it. But my initial thoughts are that I'm not super keen on it coming back into the game. But if they implement it in a good way, maybe I'll change my mind. Finally, we've got Mind Wipe now has no time limits, which my initial thoughts are that this is how they should have done it from the beginning. With the caveat of like a ramping gold sink, every time you do it, it doubles the cost. So 500, 1,000, 2,000, and then that resets, every day or every other day. I think that would have been a better implementation of the Mind Wipe system from the get-go. But better late than never, I guess, is really all I can say about this. Moving on, they've just got a bunch of, information here where they're talking about why they did multiclassing and some developer comments on thanking everybody for participating in the experiment, so on and so forth. But the important things I wanted to touch on, because I'm sure all of you guys can come read this if you're interested, but they mentioned we are working on ideas for a newer class progression system and will announce details once we have something more concrete to share. At least for now, we'll have the traditional class system until the next season. Thank you. Quite vague here. They don't provide much information on what this newer class progression system is going to be like. From my personal opinion, I hope it has something to do with the skill trees that were being showcased previously in the training section and just, infamously said coming soon for quite some time. But obviously we just don't know at this point in time. Only thing I can really say about this is I'm not super... I don't really, I guess I'll say I don't really understand why they would keep it in for an additional week. If they've come to the determination that some majority of the player base is not very fond of multiclassing and wants it out of the game, do they really feel the need to keep it for an additional week? Which I know this coincides with the Mind Wipe having no time limits, and they briefly mention in here that they want to allow players to kind of test out some of their craziest build ideas that maybe they haven't gotten to trial so far. But I don't think that many people would be too upset if multiclassing was just removed in this patch. So if you've already come to the conclusion that you're going to remove it, do you really need to leave it in for another week? I don't know. It doesn't hurt too much, but I can't say I'm super fond of it not being gone now. The only other thing worth touching on, the main thing worth touching on is they say, our goal is to get players into good quality matches in a quick manner while offering map variety. And this has led us to consider a complete overhaul of the matchmaking system, which we will share with you soon. Once again, very vague. They don't provide much information here on what this overhaul is going to look like, so I can't really touch on it too much. But the main thing I want to point out is they say offering map variety, which comes off a little bit weird to me because they already offer map variety. There's 3 maps to choose from. As a solo player, you can queue into any of them. Obviously, you're going to be at a disadvantage for 2 of them, but you have the ability to queue into any of these maps with a full group size if you want to play those maps. And rather than offering map variety, by implementing a map rotation system, it kind of seems like they're enforcing map variety as opposed to offering it. So now as a soloist player, you don't have the option of queuing strictly Goblin Caves unless you want to wait for the map rotation to go back to Goblin Caves every time. And rather, you're going to be forced to play all 3 of the maps as a soloist player. You're going to have to learn all 3 of the maps, things of that nature. So I'll really have to see how I feel about this. Like I said, I haven't tested the map rotation system myself yet. This is going to be my first chance to do so. But outside of that little weird feeling about them offering map variety, the only thing I can add to that is that I can envision some balance issues popping up. If you take a map that was originally intended to be a solos map and was built with that in mind, like the Goblin Caves, and then arbitrarily after the fact, you decide you're gonna force trios groups to play in that map, I can just imagine there's going to be some issues with that. There's very tight corridors in the Goblin Caves, smaller rooms. The map was built for solos in mind. So, enforcing trios groups to play on a map like that, I'm not too surprised that there are a lot of people out there that don't like the idea of playing trios Goblin Caves. So, we'll have to see what that ends up being like. With the 5x5 Goblin Caves map being the only one now, maybe it won't be as bad, but we'll just have to see. Other than that, though, there's just a lot of additional information in here that's not super important, just kind of some developer comments and developer ideas. But I'll leave you guys to read all that on your own time if you're interested. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I appreciate you for tuning in. And last but not least, take it easy, chefs.